All right, so you're all here. I still see, thank goodness, or maybe not. It's hard to say. So, like everyone else, I was out there watching the eclipse and having a good old time. And I got to thinking about, why do we like to scare ourselves with these prophecies? But I know I promised you that I would talk a bit about how I became a believer and sort of a bit of my background for you. So let's start there. When I was young, I was raised by my mother, of course, who was very Christian, and she didn't just talk the talk, she walked the walk. In fact, she walked the walk more so than she ever talked about it. So I was raised with her values for sure, leading one person who was in my life to say to me that I was the most Christian atheist he'd ever met. And I never quite knew whether to take that as a compliment or an insult. But it did make me think a little bit about things. And I didn't ever think that atheists don't have moral values. And there is some argument that some people think that they don't, or that they can't justify them because they don't have the grounding of the Bible. And I don't think that's the case. I think there's plenty of reasons to have moral values, as I did. And so atheists, I'm not dismissing them in any way to say that they don't have values, moral values, because they do. So anyway, flash forward to being, a 12, 13-year-old, somewhere in there. And I got very interested in sort of the intellectual side of things. And so one of the first things that influenced my thinking towards becoming an atheist was a book by Bertrand Russell that was published in 1957 called Why I Am Not a Christian. And though my mother was aware of my beliefs, she never really got on to me about it. She let me believe what I wanted to believe. And I think that was wise. I think that people ultimately will come to God in their own time. And so if you're watching this and you're not a believer, I'm not trying to convince you of anything. This is just kind of my journey. And if you're curious about how a person would go from being an atheist to a believer, then I hope that you'll tag along for that journey. Hit the subscribe button, of course, and like, because that helps get the message out to you for future upcoming videos, so you'll be notified. But it also increases the algorithm so that other people who might benefit from anything I might have to say will also see it, because it puts it in people's feed. So anyway, the book Why I Am Not a Christian by Bertrand Russell was, I think, a pivotal book in the thinking, and has affected thinking even to this day. So basically he argued, it was a collection of essays of his, and basically he argued that Christianity wasn't very logical or scientific. That's kind of the bottom line on it all. He focused more on science and religion. And so from an intellectual standpoint, that was very appealing to me. When you're coming to that age in your adolescence, you're thinking about things a lot, and everything takes on a deeper sort of meaning to you. And so you're searching for meaning. And so as I went through life, then I had a few experiences along the way that I couldn't quite explain. And, at first you shuffle those off and you think just coincidence or an odd event, just not something that had a lot of meaning. And as you go through life and those things accumulate, then you start to kind of wonder about things. One of the earlier stories that sort of represented a belief in the life after death was a person telling me that he was at a friend's house staying overnight, and unbeknownst to them, the mother had died in the night. And at about 4 o'clock in the morning, she comes in to say goodnight to the boys. But then they found out the next morning she had died more like around midnight. So that was a very odd thing. And you go, well, okay, maybe they were dreaming. So, you shuffle off a lot of these things. But as time goes on and they start to accumulate, it becomes harder and harder to look at the accumulation of events. And I'm sure you have them in your life. Look at the accumulation of events and just dismiss them. So what I decided ultimately to do, I became an agnostic, thinking, well, there's maybe somebody or something bigger. We can't really know. But I no longer believe there's nothing. I just kind of more believe I don't know, or perhaps there is something, but maybe not a God, maybe some kind of force. And so you kind of soften, you can see a softening of my belief systems. And, again, over time, that starts to fall away. And more recently, what has really made a believer in me, ironically, is the widespread evidence that we see all around us that seems to be only in something I could call evil. Like, there's a lot of things going on in this world right now that I can't make sense of. And so I started looking into a lot of that. And in this series of videos that I plan to do, I'm going to be looking at a lot of that evidence. And so some of it is, you know, evil incarnate, like demon possession. I'll be reviewing some books like this one here, Demon Possession. It's a collection of stories of people that are professional scientists, psychiatrists, doctors, as well as preachers and demonologists and priests that work in this area. So it's got a lot of interesting stories. I hope you'll find those interesting. I'm going to look again at, you know, reasonable faith. Can we use science to look at and understand belief in God? Can we actually find science in the God in science, or the science in God? Science, Faith, and Harmony. I'll be looking into these books in detail so that we can come to understand that you can't just dismiss belief as, oh, that's for stupid people who are just ignorant and, you know, believe in fairy tales and big man in the sky, as Bill Maher calls it, and some of these other more cynical atheists that are out there that show no respect to believers at all. And honestly, that kind of stuff it really shows an ignorance on their part. It shows a shallowness in their thinking. And so I want to look deeper. I don't want to be dismissive of the idea of belief, and I want to look for the evidence of belief. So another one, Quantum Glory, the science of heaven invading earth. I think that one will be a good read. I hope you'll tune in for that. The Fingerprint of God, the Creator and the Cosmos. This one has me very curious. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist. Now that's a curious twist, isn't it? So anyway, with all these this reading that I've done, I also found a Dr. Heiser. Unfortunately, he passed away recently, and I'd only just found his work, and I plan to study his work more. But he looks into the Bible in an interesting way because he knew Hebrew, and he noticed that the word God is sometimes gods, plural. So that was a curious thing to him. And from there, he's developed a whole large theory about how it all works in the heavens. And so some of his work is in this book here, The Unseen Realm. And I'll probably have a whole series on talking about him. The other thing that I find interesting is I've started to think in terms of evil and politics and how the two merge. This book caught my attention. Karl Marx and the Satanic Roots of Communism. There's an awful lot in here that talks about how he and his kind, and by that I mean his fellow communists, were very much into Satanism. So that's an interesting story that I plan to get into in more. And finally, you know, when push comes to shove, maybe really it is a case of believing is seeing. So where do we all begin? We're going to go through all these. I got to organize the thought on it all. I hope you'll come along for the ride. But one of the first places I started was the very first Bible. I thought that's a good place to start. And then I got to thinking maybe I really need to go back even further and look back into the Old Testament and the Jewish religion. Anyway, I don't know what I am. I do believe in God now. I didn't always. I don't know whether I would join a particular religion. I don't know whether that's just people squabbling on the finer details, the finer points of it all. But it's going to be an interesting journey, and I hope you'll come along. So please hit the subscribe button and fasten your seatbelts because it might be a bumpy ride. Thanks. Have a great day.